In this lecture, we're going to learn about SASS. SASS is a style sheet language, just like CSS. It's a common language used for web development. Unfortunately, it's not natively supported by browsers. If we want to write SASS code, we need to compile it into CSS. We can use Webpack to compile SASS into CSS. SASS is entirely optional. I recommend checking it out because a lot of Vue projects utilize SASS. The great thing about SASS is we don't need to learn an entirely new language. It's very similar to CSS. In fact, you can think of SASS as a language built on top of CSS. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to the official SASS site. SASS describes itself as CSS with superpowers. I would say that's a pretty great description. Writing SASS code is similar to writing CSS code. You'll feel right at home when we start using it. First things first, we have to prepare Webpack to handle SASS. We'll switch over to the command line. Inside the command line, input the following command. npm install node-sass sass-loader css-loader save-dev. We're installing 3 modules. Let's review each of them. The node-sass module will take care of compiling the SASS code into CSS code. This module can be independently used without Webpack. It has no connection to it. It's the recommended module if you ever want to use SASS in your JavaScript application. The next module is the SASS loader module. This module will tell Webpack we'll be writing our SASS code in our application. By default, it'll use the node-sass module to compile the code. This is why we're installing the node-sass module alongside this module. Lastly, we're installing the CSS loader module. That may seem strange, but when we run the code through the SASS modules, the code will be compiled into CSS. That's what we want, but once again, Webpack doesn't understand CSS. We need to add this module so that Webpack will know how to handle CS code when it encounters it. Alright, let's run the command to install the modules. The next step is to use loaders. In the editor, we open the Webpack configuration file. We're going to update the rules property to check if the file being loaded is a SASS file. Inside this array, we'll add an object. The test will be the following: / dot SCSS $. The extension for SASS files can be SCSS or SASS. Either one works, but SCSS is the most commonly used extension. Next, if the test passes, we'll want to tell Webpack to use the SASS loader. We'll add the use property. Its value will be an array. We're making this an array because we want multiple loaders to be applied to the same file type. We'll add 2 loaders to this array. They're the CSS loader and SASS loader. When Webpack comes across SASS files, our code will run through both loaders. The order does matter. Webpack will run the loaders from bottom to top. This means that the SASS loader will process the code first, followed by the CSS loader. If we were to place the CSS loader as the last item in the array, it would not work since the CSS loader does not understand SASS code. Webpack should now be able to understand how to process SASS code. We can begin using SASS in our project. Let's create a new file in our project called main.scss. The file extension for SASS files is SCSS. This is what we told Webpack to look for in our configuration. Let's write some SASS code. What does SASS code look like? It looks like CSS. We can write regular CSS without having to learn a new syntax. All selectors and properties are supported. For this example, we will change the color of the h1 tag. We'll change the color to red. This is entirely valid SASS code. The next thing we'll do is process it through Webpack. At the moment, Webpack is not aware this file exists. How do we make Webpack aware this file exists? There are 2 ways we can go about it. We can add this file as an entry inside the configuration or import it through JavaScript. Either solution works. We'll import the file through JavaScript. Inside the index file, we'll import the SASS file. Technically, this import shouldn't work. This is not a feature of JavaScript. You can only import and export JavaScript code. However, this will not be processed as JavaScript code. During the compilation process, Webpack will scan our files for import statements. Every time we import a file, Webpack will add it as a dependency. It'll map each dependency into a dependency graph. This is all performed internally. Webpack does not execute the JavaScript code. It scans our codebase for import statements. It's the reason why we don't see console statements in the command line during compilation. This is also why we're able to import different file types. Webpack will make sure that the build it produces will be able to load these files. We'll see what this looks like once we build the project. Inside the command line, run the command npm run start. By looking at the log, Webpack was able to process the SASS file without any problems. However, where's the CSS? According to the log, we'll see that one file was created called bundle.js. Let's open the bundle.js file. If we scroll through the file, we'll eventually find a comment that shows where the main.scss file is loaded. If we continue scrolling, we'll eventually find the CSS that we imported. This is not exactly what we're aiming for. Webpack is treating the CSS as JavaScript. Unfortunately, this will not work. Yes, the CSS code is being bundled, but it will not affect the document itself. We can even test this. Back inside the document, we'll add an h1 tag with some dummy text. Next, we'll switch to the browser and refresh. The content will appear, but the stylings do not get applied. The reason the styles don't get applied is because Webpack does not automatically apply these styles to the document. It'll store these styles in the JavaScript file, but won't do anything with it. In the next lecture, we'll explore how we can fix this problem.